This is the Ballin' Out Podcast, your weekly breakdown of Red Raider basketball from Double T 97.3 and Double T Sports Network.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Gaslighters. I'm Rob Breaux. He's Chois Woodman. There is a wonderful thing that you can do right now if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, wherever you're listening, subscribe. Hit the like button. It lets us know you're listening. It lets us know you appreciate us as much as we appreciate you. Texas Tech basketball, I'm going to say they're on a rough stretch.
Because they lost that game?
The last four games, I'm going to say they're on a rough stretch. 40-point victory in there. But you go back to Arizona State, and TCU.
Okay.
Oklahoma State in there too. You've not played as good on defense. You've struggled in stretches offensively.
Okay.
And if this is your rough stretch, you're pretty daggone good.
Yeah.
But I do think this is a little bit of a rough stretch just based on how you opened the Big 12. Now, you opened up really good. So to call it a rough stretch, maybe a little tongue-in-cheek, but the TCU loss combined with a couple of previous performances just offensively and defensively, kind of throw out the Oklahoma State game because it's the outlier. And I feel like Texas Tech needs to get back to a little bit of what they were doing.
It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard out of your mouth, Rob, to call it a rough stretch, but
I've said some pretty crazy things.
I don't know. 2-2. 2-2 is a rough stretch for this basketball team because you're 11-4 overall this year. You have sights set really high, and I truly believe Texas Tech is one of 10 to 12 teams in the entire country that could win a national championship this year. So I think, I think there's things to shore up, things to fix, and I think it does start on the defensive end. I don't think that you have been bad defensively necessarily, but you set such a high bar where 6 games this year, 6 of them, and one of them is this Oklahoma State game in Stillwater, you've held teams in the 50s in Big 12 play. That's crazy. 6 in the 50s. And I think the Arizona State game, to me, is somewhat of an outlier because of how odd the game was. You just don't see games like that in Big 12 play hardly ever. So it's hard for me to group that one in, but the Oklahoma State game can be an outlier on the other side with how great you played and how much you beat them down. So everything averaged together, you could call it a rough stretch, Rob.
You know, if you're taking those 2 games out as outliers, kind of the top end and the bottom end, offensively, defensively.
And those are 2 wins.
You're left with Arizona and TCU.
2 losses, so I don't want to take them out.
And 2 games where I think you would say that the other team was more aggressive and tougher.
I think that's where I walk away from the TCU game in particular, just frustrated. And maybe I wasn't even that frustrated when I watched the game. There's games where I've just gotten mad. This one was just disappointed and more annoyed than anything, to be honest, because TCU, it didn't feel like Tech didn't want the basketball game, but it felt like TCU really wanted that basketball game, and they wanted it more than you. It wasn't a case where Tech just didn't show up for a day. It wasn't one of those. That building seems to have a mental block for whatever reason for the Red Raiders right now, and they just played well. They played well. Tech played average, and it wasn't enough to win on that particular night. There's average. Tech's average can beat TCU several nights. It wasn't good enough this week.
Yeah, they played well above average.
Yeah.
And you played average, and it was a 3-point game.
Yeah.
You probably played below average in some ways.
Maybe a little bit. The bench scoring for sure was below average, and I think that's obviously your biggest hindrance from that game. Your stars played like stars, but we've been so used to your role players playing really well for Texas Tech, your 7 deep bench getting what you need to out of them. So for your next leading scorer beyond your top 3 to only have 5 points is not going to be good enough against good teams. And I think TCU, while I don't know if they end up making the tournament or not, they would quantify or qualify as a good basketball team. I mean, they've won 5 out of 6, and they're at least a fringe tournament team.
They were good last night. I don't know that they're bad offensively. Had been.
Yeah.
But they have a guy in Trezarian White who maybe is working out some demons there from not coming to Texas Tech.
And my understanding, this is grapevine stuff or whatever, but it wasn't him saying no to Texas Tech. It was the other way around. So I think there was absolutely extra motivation there.
And
he came to campus to visit.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah, well, he came to campus and he was there at Schollmeyer for sure, doing his best Desmond impression.
Yes,
Desmond Bain impression.
He came to play.
A little bit their Super Bowl. Of course, Jamie Dixon's very good against teams with top 10 rankings. So
somehow
it is what it is. And look, I think TCU in stretches has been good this year. I'm not too worried about that game, but it does set you up to need to have a good week and a half here.
Yeah.
With West Virginia, Houston,
Agreed.
and Kansas. Bill Self.
What is going on?
Is he washed? People are saying I'm not. I'm not saying it. People are saying it.
I feel like there's more pressure on Tech to win that. I know we're a couple weeks out, but to win that game, or a week and a half out, in Lawrence now because of how bad they've played. It's like you almost have to expect to beat that team with as poorly as Kansas has played.
Yeah, most years that game is just written up as a loss because you never win there.
Yeah.
If you win, awesome. If not, who cares?
There has never been a better opportunity to, as far as teams on paper, to win in Allen Fieldhouse than Texas Tech has going into this particular game. But I think the point you're making, Rob, is exactly true where what the TCU game did for you, it eliminates margin for error, right? Yep. I mean, you had a margin for error with how good you had played up to that point. That loss takes that away where you really can't lose another one to a West Virginia or to really even – I mean, I guess you could lose to Kansas, but then that means you got to beat Houston. So that margin for error is gone now.
Yeah, I think you need to win 2 of the next 3 to really propel yourself into what we've been talking about, 3 seeds.
Yep.
2 seeds if you win all 3 potentially.
Maybe.
I think you're still probably bottom 3 seed, top 4 seed right now. But as we're talking about Kansas and Houston, the question for Grant McCaslin and his team is, how do you not look past West Virginia?
That's a great question because they're coming off of a win at home over Cincinnati. Those are 2 of the lesser teams in the league. I think, obviously, they lost DeVries earlier in the year, their best player. But I think it is still a team that's well coached and has good fight in them. And West Virginia is another one of those teams, very much like TCU, that's fringe tournament. Like good enough, talented enough to be in the tournament. Don't know if they're going to have the resume to get in. So I think had you beaten TCU, maybe that would be a problem. I doubt there's going to be a whole lot of motivation issue since you're coming off of a loss.
West Virginia has a very good guard and not a lot else.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really led by Javon Small. And then you've already played Houston, so there's some familiarity there. Do you have a prediction for the next 2 games? Maybe a Saturday and a Monday.
Do you want my homework prediction?
No, well, just maybe like a legitimate.
I am
what
a homer.
You think will
I'm a
happen.
homer through and through. So I do think Texas Tech goes 2-0 in these next 2 games. I think the Houston one is your toughest game, obviously remaining on the schedule. And I think the fact that you beat them there motivates them even more, like we saw with Arizona and Tucson. I think you got an extra effort out of them there. So I think we're talking about, we'll start with the West Virginia one. I think it's going to be close in the first half, but like many of these games, you'll separate and win somewhere in the 12 to 17 range, win by double digits. The Houston one, I think, is one of those last possession type of games, and we saw one of the games of the year in Houston. I think you'll see a similar type of effort in this one because it's 2 Final Four caliber teams going up against each other, and both know what's on the line. Tech is trying to get into that 3 seed territory, maybe even a 2, like you mentioned, which, by the way, every single one of your Sweet 16 appearances in school history have come with a 3 seed next to your name. So you've got motivation to get to that 3 line. And Houston is playing for a 1 seed. I mean, Houston is hoping there's a little bit of cannibalism in the SEC and one of those 3 teams get knocked out. And Houston wants to get into that 1 line and, in my opinion, should already be there right now. But they're not getting that sort of national respect just yet. So if they want to get a 1 seed, they almost feel like every game is a must for them.
I totally agree on West Virginia. And I disagree on Houston. I agree with I agree with the points you made, but the outcome I think would be more in line with the points you made. In that Houston will be motivated.
Oh, I think they will.
And they'll give you their best shot. Not that they didn't in the first game, but I could see Texas Tech losing that game by 6-10.
Here's where the extra edge comes from Texas Tech in this game. I think JT Toppin, for not getting to play, we've seen high motor JT Toppin and what that can do. And while Houston has a monster defensive presence, I don't think that defensive presence will get the whistle they get at home a lot of times. They've still been able to play through it on the road, but there have been some close games. Remember, they should not have won it in Orlando. Mm-hmm. What in the world's happened to UCF? That's another topic altogether. But I think you'll get a very motivated JT Toppin to play over Juwan Roberts and to get a lot of buckets inside against a very physical Houston team. And I think you're going to see a lot of free throws in this game as well because a tight whistle will favor the home team there.
Oh, that's correct.
I mean, it's wishful thinking at least.
5 games remaining for Texas Tech. We've talked about 3. The last 2, just for seeding purposes, you have to beat Colorado.
Obviously, yes.
I don't know that Arizona State matters much in the win-loss column if they win a few more. That's one of those games that's like, okay, that's probably not going to move you off a seed line. It's certainly not going to move you up if you beat them.
Sure.
But I don't think it moves you back if you lose to them.
That's one where I don't know. Again, the TCU one may have hurt your margin for error there where you can't lose that. I don't think it drops you out of a full seed line, but it might make the difference. It could if you're already teetering on that 3-4 edge.
Yeah.
So you don't. It's one where you definitely want to win it.
I think something we do need to keep an eye on is BYU.
Uh-huh.
And they've I think they're 2 games behind Arizona, Iowa State.
Yeah.
No, Iowa State, Texas Tech.
Correct. Arizona's 1 more up.
If they win a couple more games here, it puts more pressure on you to keep winning because you really need to be that top 4 Big 12 to be in the Big 12 tournament. So
you get
some things going on
the
here.
double bye here with the Big 12 tournament.
Kansas finishes. They have Oklahoma State, Colorado in the next 2, and then they have Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech in some order, with Houston on the road.
Yeah,
I think they finish with Arizona. Obviously, that's the math there.
Kansas better take care of the next 2 for sure.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantees with the way they've been playing that's going to happen. So, yikes. I mean, we're watching Bill Self melt before our eyes.
Oklahoma State scored 55 against Texas Tech. They scored 53 in the first half against whoever they played. Who did they play? It was Oklahoma State.
You're putting me on the spot.
Now hold on. I watched it. It was yesterday or the day before. No, it was yesterday. Who did they play last night?
Oklahoma State is coming off of a game.
They played
against UCF.
UCF.
That one.
It's UCF.
They put up 104 points.
Obviously. Yeah.
Last night. Yeah.
In regulation. Did you see the end of the Cincinnati game? West Virginia?
I saw,
West Virginia favored by 3.5, up 9.
Oh, no, I didn't see the finish.
West Virginia 3.5, up 9. 16 seconds left. Cincinnati banks a 3.
Okay.
Steals the inbound. Drains a 3. Same guy. Off a deflection. Lost by 3.
Someone was very sad. over
Somebody
that.
was very upset.
And
about
someone else is very happy. We always talk about bad beats on how terrible it is for somebody.
That's a great beat for somebody.
But, yeah, it's a miracle for someone else. So.
Yeah, that plus 3.5 Cincinnati was a savior. All right, I think that's all we have. Big time week for Texas Tech. West Virginia, I think, is a big game because right now, if the season ended, they're a tournament team.
I think so.
Just based on their non-con, who they beat. I don't know that they necessarily deserve it, but just looking at the analytics, they are a tournament team right now.
Yeah.
That's not my opinion. That's just like bracket
So look at the
matrix
bracket.
and whatever else.
Yeah, the projections they're in.
And then obviously Houston is massive as well. So if you can stay in the top 15 of net, Ken Palm across the last 5 games, you'll be in a really good spot. And obviously you're at 7 or 8 right now, so I don't see you falling too far. But Kansas has fallen off a cliff, so there's nothing is guaranteed, as they say.
And that doesn't help your conference. We've seen that bias when it comes to football so many times of your big dog needing to be your big dog. As stupid as it is, it does matter in the human selection process. So Kansas faltering hurts the league as a whole. I'm not sad about it,